Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's 9 o'clock. And I don't know if any of the rest of you went through the roundabout on Del Sol this morning or attempted to. You couldn't get through there very easily. Our presenter today found that out on her way over here. So she's due here at 9:06, according to her GPS.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's where we are right now. For those 4 people out there in Zoom land, there is not a slideshow presentation. We're going to attempt to have the speaker stand in front of the computer as I'm doing when she makes her presentation. So that's what you will see. And we do appreciate the fact that they're allowing us to go through Zoom and allowing us to record it. And we'll put it on our website for those that aren't there. So what am I going to do for 6 minutes? Oh, man. I think. What I'll do is a welcome, though. Welcome to the GVR Forum Club. We meet every Wednesday from October through April, right here at the Desert Hills Center. And we have a variety of speakers that come here and present to us, all the way from humorous to informative, as we have today, to entertaining, to whatever. Some of the upcoming things that we have is the new director of the GVR Council, who I've met a few times and believe he is doing a really great job. He's been here about 6 months, if I remember right, Paul? Okay. Yeah, okay. He has some association with them. And he will be here. Of course, our favorite 1950s music man will be here in late November, I believe, doing secular Christmas for us, part 4. This will be the 4th year he's done it. The word secular, I've always thought was kind of strange. Secular means non-religious. So you get secular, and then they say non-secular, which is non-religious. Now, wait a minute. That makes no sense to me. It does remind me of a little story. However, these 2 guys were talking, and one of them said, in some languages, foreign languages, you put a positive and a negative together, and it means a negative. All right. And if you take 2 negatives and put together, it can mean a positive. All right. But there's no language that 2 positives can make a negative. The other guy says, yeah, right. Digging back in my bad memory here. Yeah. Yeah, right. Is that our all right, she's a minute early. Or 4 minutes late, depending on how you want to look at it. Okay. What I have, whenever you are ready, come on up here, because we are broadcasting this via Zoom and we are recording it. So what you have to do is do your talk from right here. Okay. And you'll be able to see yourself.
Oh gosh.
And that's what our Zoom No, you don't look like that. You look much better. And we do have a wireless mic here, if you prefer doing that.
Oh, no, I'll do that. I'll sing a song.
You like that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, maybe you'll come back in 2 weeks and we have Let's Dance.
Okay.
Yeah, we got a couple coming up here and they came over and looked at the place early this week, I guess it was. No, it was last Friday, and they're kind of excited to coming back. Very dynamic couple. They should do a really good job of Let's Dance. So, and I don't even know your name, so you can introduce yourself, and we're going to start right now.
Thank you. Sounds like you've done a wonderful job entertaining people. Thank you.
The joke is a little suspect.
Okay.
No more.
Good way to keep warm is a bit of humor. So my name is Ala D. Goodman. I'm the director of Solistic Hospice, and thank you for coming today. And I see some familiar faces. And so does everybody have one of these? If you don't, put your hand up and Super Anchor will bring you one, because I'm going to be utilizing this throughout the talk that I'm going to give. And so I guess you're all ready to hear about hospice. I think what we're doing is people are scared of the word hospice, so they pretend it doesn't exist, and then they call us when it's too late or very late, and when someone really, really, really needs help. And I think people think that hospice means that someone has about 3 days to live, which isn't true. That's, you want to get the service when someone qualifies for the benefit, not when it's like a dire need. And of course it's a need, but at the very, very end, it's basically we're just putting out fires and getting somebody comfortable. So there was just a study done in the US that 30% of people in America believe that hospice hastens death. I don't know if anyone here had thought that, but actually hospice does not hasten death. It does quite the opposite. It actually lengthens life. And so that's why we're educating hospice, because we can get in there and help people that might end up dying sooner than necessary if they don't get some help in the home. And we can adjust and do certain things, and then they get better and they can come off. Now, that doesn't always happen that way, but it does happen that way. Some people are just, for example, not managing their medications or on way too many medications. And they're all having a lot of side effects. They might be making the person fall. They might be having so many medications they have no appetite. Because if you have 20 pills for breakfast, then the amount of fluid you have to drink to take 20 pills, and that's making you dizzy and you're falling and whatever that might be. By the time you're done with your 20 pills, there's not really much room left for some nutrition. And so if we can help the person cut back how many pills they're taking, if they don't need all of those anymore, then let's do it, because they do all have side effects. Let me just ask, how long do I have, by the way? Is it less? How long do I have? Oh, okay. I don't need to talk so fast then. I get sometimes 10 minutes, sometimes 15 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes. And so I've learned to condense the talk and to talk faster and faster, and or condense it without explaining things as deeply. So anyway, there are studies done that hospice, people that go on hospice do live longer than people who don't go on hospice at that time. And to go on hospice, someone really needs to be at a place that they don't want to be going to the hospital. They don't want aggressive treatments, chemo, radiation, surgeries, those types of things. And they're not really well enough to do that, and that they really need comfort cares at home. And so we're there to help your loved one at that point. And I usually, when I'm giving a talk to an audience as such as yourselves, we gear this towards, maybe you know of somebody, even if you aren't a hospice candidate, which I assume almost most of you aren't, you know somebody, and it may be your neighbor, it may be a loved one, it may be a family member, a friend. So so that's some of the, I'm going to dispel the myths of hospice initially, which I've started doing. Then I'm going to share about what hospice services provides. And then I'm going to share who qualifies for hospice. So, and then at the end, we'll have time for questions. I think if we wait till the end for questions, unless you really have a burning one, you might find it gets answered throughout, and then we'll have the ones that I don't answer. We'll have plenty of time to answer at the end. So just I'll tell you a little bit about myself, because most people will look at me and go, where is she from? So, and then they don't hear my talk. So I'll just get that out of the way. I'm from New Zealand, and I did my nursing training in New Zealand, and I have been living in the States for over 25 years now. And so the New Zealand training is really an excellent training. And then I came to New York and I set my boards in Manhattan and went back to New Zealand and came to Texas and then ended up in Arizona. So, and now I'm a citizen here and have been here in Arizona for most of the time. So, and I've been a hospice nurse for about 17 years. And I've done about every possible area of hospice that I could do. I'm also an ordained minister, so I've also done spiritual side of it. I haven't done the social work because I'm not a social worker. That's the only thing I haven't done. But in reality, I don't know if there's any nurses in here, but nurses do a lot of social work as well. And I've been the volunteer coordinator. I've done the outreach. I've done the RN, all the RN work and the on-call and the admissions and everything possible. So I love hospice, and I plan to be doing hospice for a long time. So so back to the myths of hospice and the things that people, that prevent people from picking up the phone and calling us. Money. People think I can't afford hospice. How on earth am I gonna pay for hospice? I've already got these caregivers and they cost me $20 an hour or $25 an hour. How am I going to do hospice? So the good news is hospice is 100% covered by the Medicare benefit, hospice Medicare benefit. There's no copay. And then for those that do not have Medicare, it's also it's covered by Medicaid, and then it's covered by most private insurances as well. Now, I work for Solistic Hospice. I helped start Solistic Hospice. We are a nonprofit hospice. We've never turned anyone away that has no insurance. And so, if somebody qualifies and they are uninsured, then we take care of them as well. So your support for us as a nonprofit helps us to help these people too. And we go down, we spread all over the place. We go everywhere that no one wants to go because it's not financially, helpful for somebody to go there, to go all the way to Aravaca for one patient. We will do that. We go to Sonoita, Patagonia, of course, Nogales, all the way up the line here to Green Valley, here, of course, somebody to all over Tucson. We're just expanding into Mammoth, Oracle, and San Manuel. They're underserved areas as well. Also 3 Points. So we're not afraid to drive to care for somebody, and those people need help just as much as everybody else. So, so another myth about hospice is a place. So people think, well, if I go on hospice, they're going to come put me on a stretcher or pick me up in a van and take me to the hospice house. Hospice is done, about 98% of hospice is done in a person's home, whatever that person calls home: assisted living, mobile home park, apartment, a private home, a skilled nursing facility if they live there long term. And so, we actually have a limited benefit now with hospice to go somewhere else. the government really tightened up what we call inpatient care. And that's around 5 days of inpatient care that we can provide if a patient is having uncontrollable symptoms, something that the family cannot take care of at home. And we have to prove and document that the person is in extreme pain or having extreme agitation or anxiety that can't be treated from home. So it's not like we can just send someone somewhere and take care of them 24/7. So hospice is not a 24/7 benefit even in the home, because some people think, I don't want people in my house all that time. No, we don't come and move in, and we don't take over the caregiving service. It's either the loved one does that, or there are private caregivers that the family has to hire. We are the icing on the cake. We're the medical team that come in and we train people how to take care of people as they decline and need more help. So, and that's one of our big goals, is to make a hero out of the caregiver, because, you know, if you're there taking care of your spouse or your parent, you want to be able to, you know, look back on that experience and say, I gave them the best care, you know, and then that's what we do. We're teachers. So if anyone's ever had somebody that they've cared for, then all of a sudden they're bedbound, and you're like, gosh, what do I do? And I know there's such a thing as a draw sheet, and how do I get one? And what do I do? And how do I move them? And how do I prevent bed sores? And how do I change them and bathe them when they're in bed, and all that kind of thing? That's what we help educate, and we help do some of that too, of course, but we're not there every time that someone needs to be changed or get a pill or, you know, whatever that may be. So our team is in there to train you. Then people sometimes they think that hospice comes in and we come in with our little bag of tricks and we have a whole big bucket of morphine or something, and we come in and we give everyone morphine, and we make everyone sleepy and tired, and then they're sedated. And we don't do that. We don't treat symptoms that don't exist. So we don't give pain medicines if someone's not in pain, or and we actually are at a holistic hospice. We do practice integrative medicine. We have one of our physicians, she is an integrative medicine physician, and we also have all the standard medications as well, and so we really don't want to give anybody anything they don't need. We also don't come in and take away everything as well. I think that there have been times where, and this rumor spreads around the whole country. I hear it no matter where I speak, and no matter where somebody's from, that, oh, my mother went on hospice and they took away her medicines and she died 2 days later. Well, and then it becomes this myth and this sense that hospice comes in and takes away your medicines and that kills somebody, which unfortunately that's absolutely not what happens. What happens is the person is already in their active phase of the end of life. They're already what we would call imminently dying, and the nurse will come in. The person might be in pain. When you know what it's like, if you've been in pain, you can't sleep. If you're in pain, you can't pass either as peacefully. You can't rest and get to that deep place of resting if you're hurting. And so we might come in and we'll say, okay, we can see that someone is actively dying. It's one of those late referrals. And and they can't swallow. And so we need to stop their medicines or they're going to choke. So that we say, look, they don't need their medicines, and we're going to give them some morphine. They're in pain. The person is at peace, they're comfortable, they go to sleep, and they're able to pass away peacefully. And so I think some people who don't understand, or maybe they weren't educated correctly or they just didn't hear because of the emotions of the situation, that happens. And then time goes on and they go, well, hospice came in, stopped all her meds, gave her some morphine, and then she died. And hospice killed my whoever, my uncle, my mom, whatever that might be, or the rumor goes down the family. And I swear this gets around the whole country. And so I like to let people know that that's not what happens, and with hospice at all. In fact, we are there to keep someone comfortable and help them have, just like a midwife when you have a baby, you know, and midwife comes in and helps you have a good delivery. The hospice team are also midwives, and I don't know if there's a term for male midwives, but but they're also midwives for our male nurses and team on the other side, helping the person transition out. And, you know, when I started hospice, I was only 30 years old, and I'm only 31 now, but anyway, I was only 30 years old, and I had to face my own mortality because I wasn't really, hadn't been around dying so much. And so I'm very comfortable, as you can tell, talking about death. I think it's a very beautiful thing. People are always very happy about where they're going. I've had some very spiritual experiences with people. It's hardest on the loved ones that are left behind, but I tell the person where they're going, they're really happy about going there. And death is a very beautiful thing. And so to have to really be thinking about, I mean, I signed my own DNR at that time. I was like, I do not want to be resuscitated because I've seen what that does. And so I think death is something that we need to become, as a culture, more comfortable talking about. It's going to happen to all of us. We can't avoid it. And that back in the day when grandma was, you know, at home in the farm, and grandma was there until she passed, and she passed at home with the kids, and everyone was there. And, you know, death used to be much more part of life. It was much more until we started as a culture sending grandma away or to hospitals or to facilities to pass, and it happened away from people and away from children. So but I think, and maybe some of you grew up like that, I'm not sure, but that where death was more in your family, and maybe as kids, you were your own grandma, you were there when she passed away. So I think there's a lot of beauty in that, and there's a lot of beauty in having children even around the process, because it's not this taboo kind of, we don't need to avoid it. And it is, and for people, and I think a good percentage, or maybe 80%, someone could correct me, of Americans believe in God. I think if people have faith and believe in God, they are they have faith that they're going somewhere good. So, and probably a lot better than here. So there's really not much to be scared of. So, and so our team, who are very comfortable with the death and dying process, make it more natural for people. And we come in and just very comfortable about it, and that brings people at ease. Just like when the midwife arrives and someone's having a baby, and oh, thank God the midwife's here, and it just becomes a normal, natural process. And every woman can have a baby or whatever, you know, and just like every person has to transition. So I'm just checking my brain here to see if I've missed any major myths. You know, like I'll just recap over those. Hospice is not a place; it comes to your home. Hospice does not mean you're going to die in 3 days, or that it doesn't hasten death. Hospice doesn't cost anything. Hospice doesn't come in and take away all your meds or give you medications you don't need. Somebody can keep their primary care physician, or they can switch to primary care to us. And sometimes it's much more realistic and they have the continuity of care just to have hospice take over primary care, because we're there and the person can't really sit in the doctor's office for 2 hours waiting for their appointment. And and we can get things done quickly with our doctors and our team. So so that's a little intro to some of the most important facts and most important reasons that someone doesn't pick up the phone and talk about hospice. So I'm going to go into now what hospice provides, what hospice care provides. And obviously nursing, and I have been touching on it throughout, but nursing visits. And the nursing visits are based upon the need of the patient. So if the patient needs a visit once a week, that's okay. If the patient needs a visit every day, then we'll make a visit every day. When someone is actively in the transition phase, we do go every day. But a lot of our patients, they really just need once or twice a week. They have wounds or things like that, it might be more. So we have the nursing services that includes after hours on call, Sunday night, 3 a.m. Mom is suddenly in pain and what the dose we have is not working anymore. What do I do? So pick up the phone and call the nurse, the on-call nurse, and call our number. And so that's very helpful. We really try and prevent hospitalization. And that's important because Medicare Part A pays for hospice. Medicare Part A pays for the hospital. You can't have hospital and hospice at the same time. So when we put someone on hospice, that person is generally not wanting to go to hospital anymore. And I don't know that really that many people do want to go to hospital, but sometimes it happens and it has to be, you have to go to hospital. And so, so we try and prevent that. We try and take care of everything we can from home. But sometimes, someone falls, unfortunately, they break their hip, they decide they want to go to have surgery, or the family want them to have surgery. Then we have to discharge the patient. So then they go to hospital, and then their Medicare just kicks back in. And so that does happen, but we're trying to prevent those stays as much as possible. And that's why if any of you are economists or think about financial things, I don't, but I'll tell you about this anyway, is that from the government's perspective, one hospital stay can cost twice, I don't know how many times more than a few months of hospice care or 6 months of hospice care. Hospital stays can really rack up really big bills for Medicare. So when the person is ready for hospice, it actually saves the government money. So if you're thinking of it from that perspective, because once I'm finished with all these services, you're going to be like, wow, that's so good. Why would they do that? So that's why it makes sense to have hospice. And I really do, on a care perspective, I do believe that hospice is the best service that's available out there, a federally paid service without any copay and etc. So, and we also provide social workers, and the social workers help and services help with, counseling, emotional support, bereavement support, help with advanced directives and Meals on Wheels, and any helping pay with bills if someone's having trouble figuring out their bills and all those kinds of things. We have the heart of our hospice are definitely the nursing assistants. They come in, do the hands-on love, care, bathing, light housekeeping. We even cut hair and do nails and all that kind of lovely stuff. And that they're really, we have a beautiful team of nursing assistants, or CNAs, as you may know them. And we have spiritual care, and we work with people's own faiths and where they're at. So if they're Buddhist or Christian or Catholic or Protestant or Hindu or whatever that might be. And so our ministers are interfaith ministers, and they can either provide the spiritual care directly, or they can work with the person's faith and their church or synagogue, etc., and bring in people from the church and say, Mr. Such and Such is they're on hospice at home, he'd like a visit from a deacon or whatever that might be. So so they coordinate that, and spiritual care is very optional, but it's actually it's a required service in hospice, which is very rare for any kind of government benefit. So and then we have volunteers. If anyone would like to be a volunteer for hospice, we train our volunteers, and it's a wonderful part of the services. And the volunteers help with shopping and companionship, and maybe just watching football with them on a Sunday or something, or a Saturday, or whenever football is. You can tell I'm not a football fan. So, then we also provide all the durable medical equipment. So if someone needs a walker, a wheelchair, a hospital bed, oxygen, all of that, we provide that, and we provide it quickly. That's the key. If anyone's ever tried to get one of those, any of those, might take you 6-8 weeks. And we just get it in the same day. And you don't have to have a whole study in the sleep study for the oxygen. We just, if someone wants it and needs it, And for comfort, we just bring it in, and you don't have to be, the oxygen saturations don't have to drop to a certain level or anything like that. And then we also provide incontinence supplies. So that's, and all medical supplies if that person has a catheter or a wound or a peg tube. But we also provide the gloves and the chucks and the wipes and the briefs and everything like that, which really is expensive if anyone has to buy those for a loved one. And medications. We provide a lot of the medications, but we also provide the pain medications, the symptom management medications, the ones that are hard to get. And we deliver those to the home. We've contracted with a pharmacy. So, and there's no copay or anything on the ones that we provide. So, you know, hospice helps physically with all the comfort care and the physical care. It helps emotionally, spiritually, and financially. So, and, you know, even the housekeeping, or if someone can bathe themselves, but they're really a little unsteady and they would do better with having someone in the house, maybe they live alone, you know, the CNA could come over and do her housekeeping part of it, and be changing the sheets and doing laundry and all that kind of stuff while the person's taking a shower. And then if they do get caught and stuck in the shower, or have, you know, have to sit down and hopefully they have a shower chair or whatever and need help, then they can just holler out and they've got somebody there. So so that's just kind of in a nutshell, briefly, what hospice provides. So now I've probably got your attention and you're like, well, that sounds good. I want hospice services because I need help with my housekeeping. And unfortunately, we can't just put everybody on, because we do have rules and regulations that we have to follow. So there is eligibility there are eligibility requirements to get somebody on. And that's how I spend some of my time, is evaluating people. Some people are easily qualified, some people we have to do a little bit more digging and talking to the doctors and so on. And so this is where this beautiful card that you have comes in. You'll see some bullet points, and the person, these are things to get people thinking. They're not the only reasons. We didn't want to keep going on and on, but with how many bullet points, but these are some of the things that will, you know, make someone think, hey, maybe my neighbor, or maybe my spouse, or my mother or father, or whoever would qualify. Maybe we can call and just ask, and that's all you can do. And a nurse can come and do an evaluation. There's no charge for that, and can come and do share some of the things that I've shared and see if a person qualifies, and then let you know. We do need a doctor's order to admit a person, but we don't need a doctor's order just to come and talk to you. So, and do the evaluation. And sometimes we have an order before we go, because we might have the order that says, go ahead and admit them if they are qualified. If you want to keep your doctor, if you want to switch to us, you can just have our doctor write that order. But we can just purely come and tell you what we think, and you can think about it, and then we can contact the doctor, or you contact the doctor afterwards too. There's no pressure. But the kinds of things that we're looking for and we're going to ask when you call in and when we go see somebody. And are they having frequent visits to the doctor? Are they having frequent hospitalizations or ER visits? Have they had any of those lately, and for what? We're just going to ask. Now, someone might say, oh yeah, they've been to the ER 6 times in the last year or whatever, and 2 admissions and whatever. But someone might say, they haven't been to the doctor in 20 years, they refuse. So that's not going to stop them from going on hospice if they qualify. It's just because some people really, they don't take any medicines, they will not go to the doctor, they will not go to the hospital, but yet they're now they're 99 years old, and that's probably why they lived to 99, because they didn't go and do those things. But they're 99 years old, and they're like, obviously they're ready for hospice. So don't let that stop you. That's what I mean. These are just kind of things to get our minds thinking. Frequent falls. If someone's falling, that's definitely a concern, and we want to know why. And that might be, I mean, it's different if they have a Great Dane that jumped on them and knocked them over, and the dog's bigger than them. Well, they're going to fall. I'm going to fall probably if I had a big dog jumping on me. But, you know, if it's because they're getting weaker, older, losing their mobility, then we count those types of falls. Uncontrolled or increased pain, we're asking questions about that, and any kind of symptoms they're having. Frequent infections, that might be urinary tract infections. Maybe they had COVID, and ever since they had COVID, they really have not recovered. Pneumonia, those types of infections, sepsis, you know, the list could go on. It just is really showing that their immune system is compromised, that they're having a hard time getting over their infections. And they get the flu and they get colds over and over again. Increased confusion, maybe different levels of dementia or just confusion. Shortness of breath. They may need oxygen. They may or may not have oxygen. They may be on it sometimes or all of the time. Often if someone's on it all of the time and they have some of these other points, they actually would qualify if they're dependent on oxygen. They're incontinent or having increased incontinence of bladder and bowel, not making it to the bathroom, losing weight and or interest in food. Some people have a great appetite, but they're still losing weight and they just are not holding on weight. You know, they still may qualify. Someone may not have lost any weight or be actually overweight, they still may qualify. Again, we're just, you know, it just depends on the whole person and what we're looking at. Difficulty swallowing, maybe they're choking on food as well. They've got increased weakness, they might be sleeping more. They require more assistance with daily care. Maybe they used to be able to dress themselves and bathe themselves, and now that it's taking them. I went and met with somebody the other day, and they said, oh no, my mom's she's still able to dress herself, but it takes her 2 hours. You know, that's not normal, you know, so we can't count that as against them. That's actually, that helps them to qualify. And of course the daughter wanted her to get on. She wasn't trying to prevent it, but she was saying, but it takes 2 hours. So that person really does require assistance with daily living and daily care. So you may notice, and the kinds of things I'm also going to ask is, what was someone like a year ago, 6 months ago? What are they like now? And so if you're the daughter or the son, and then you could tell us, say, well, a year ago, this time last year, Dad was playing golf every other day with his friends and walking the dog, and now he's falling and he can hardly even make it to the mailbox which is at the end of the path, not you know, down the miles down the road, but there are mailboxes that can hardly even make it there, and he's got to sit on his walker, and you know, that kind of thing. That's a significant decline. So we're asking those kinds of questions. And then we, of course, we look at all their health conditions and their what we call comorbidities. Do they have heart disease and any kidney disease, liver disease, cancer, diabetes, dementia, Parkinson's, stroke, history of stroke or mini strokes, what we call TIAs. Person, you know, they may, if they do have cancer, the cancer needs to have metastasized, and they need to not be getting aggressive treatment anymore, chemo and radiation, to come on hospice. If they're on dialysis, they can possibly also come on hospice still. People think that people on dialysis have to go off it to go on to hospice, but in theory, hospice is a prognosis of 6 months or less. Now, we don't know that, of course, but that's given the normal course of disease. And we don't emphasize this with people. That's something more, and I know it gets out there, and it might be on websites for hospice and so on, and that is what the certification by a physician is, but we don't really know that. And I've seen these doctors that have told their patients, you have 4 months to live, and on the day of the fourth month, they pass away. I mean, the mind has a lot of control over what we do. And so I never like to give someone a prognosis unless they're actively dying. And it's obvious that and even then I've seen people rally, and you think that they've got, 1 day or less to live, and they've got all the signs, and they're breathing, and they're purple, and you think they're going to die and within 24 hours, and then you go the next day and they're up eating spaghetti. So it's true. And so I never want to take anybody's hope away, but that 6 months prognosis is varied. And if you tell someone with dialysis, you have to go off of dialysis to come on hospice, how much time does that give them? Like 3 days, maybe 4 days to live. So of course, people with dialysis should have the option to have hospice care too, and to stop dialysis when they're ready. Now, for people that come on hospice, and we have to recertify people for hospice. So every 3 months. Now, when they get to that 6 months mark, we don't say, I'm sorry, you're still with us, we have to discharge you, and they may be way worse than they were when they came on. We're monitoring people's decline. And so they can stay on. We have patients that are on for a year, sometimes even 2 years, because they really genuinely qualify. Now, other patients, we do go, oh my gosh, they're getting a lot better, and they've gained weight, and we've stopped these medicines, and now they're not falling. And you know what, it's best, we're going to have to discharge you now. Now, for those people that we do discharge, that's a success story. And we're there for them when they need us in the future, because we're all going to need us in the future, right? So they haven't used up their benefit just because they had it back when, they can come back on. So, well, that's kind of, I think I've covered everything. I asked my coworker here, have I missed anything that you can think of?
They're also contacting the VA too, so.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And so now we have time for your questions for the things that oh, good. Ladies first, hospice lady.
Sure, I have a short story about.
Do you want a microphone?
A short story about using your dad's stuff. Tearing our heart out. So we go back to work next day. I call my stepmother. Well, he made it through the night. This goes on about 3 days. 4th day, I call. She goes, well, he's outside. Do you want to talk to him? I'll take his phone out. I said, yeah. I'm sitting in the sun making a shower. And I said, Dad, how do you feel? So that's my dad's story. And my next question is, my previous husband had cancer,
Mm-hmm.
and he wanted to die at home. So like 10 days before he died. So the cancer doctor would not let me bring in hospice. So my question is, what do you do in a circumstance like that? I called hospice. I called my primary. They said, okay, but the cancer doctor said, he died in 10 days, and he just didn't catch it. So I'm older now. I probably would have thought of more options, like walking in there.
Yeah.
But if the doctor doesn't sign off, what are your options?
But I won't. So I would fire that doctor. I mean, the first thing I do, and I'll stop right there. But that doctor has no right to stop you from, getting the care for your loved one, as long as you're not going to him still.
They won't sign off.
That doesn't matter. Another doctor, your primary care, our doctors can sign on. We can ignore the oncologist. There's a lot of sayings about oncologists, and they will keep pushing, most of them. Dr. Porterfield was a lovely doctor here in Green Valley. If anybody knows him, he did not do that, but he's now retired. But most of the doctors would not give people the broad option, and they would see it as a failure to have someone go on hospice because they think they can fix it. They can try another chemo, another radiation, another round of this, or what about this new one? Yeah, and money, unfortunately, that is involved in it too, because that means that they're not going to get paid. So it's really up to you and your loved one. If they don't want to get treatment, doesn't really matter what they say. And how long ago was that? 20 years. So the culture is probably a little bit different now. I've been a hospice nurse almost that long, but yeah, I think it's just having someone who can really advocate for you and educate you. And I'm not sure why the hospice didn't say, look, you know, don't worry what he thinks. You can still get hospice. Even if your primary care doctor, I know there was a gentleman over here too, even if your primary care doctor will not let you go on hospice and the person qualifies, you have the right and the choice. It's your benefit. And if you in the hospice thinks that you can, they do qualify, and the hospice physician thinks you can qualify, then you don't have to keep going to that primary care doctor. There are primary care doctors who are renowned for having blocks for hospice too. So I know this first man was next, and I know there's a lady over here too. I can share the question. She had more of a story.
First of all, I am the doctor.
Oh.
I'm like Dr. Peter, and you can just fire your doctor.
Thank you.
Okay. Two questions. One, about somebody that's in this.
Yes, so the question from this doctor, I love doctors. Actually, I do. But there's some that are very stubborn. And so just to tag onto that, there isn't a lot of hospice and palliative care training that's been done in medical school in certain, particularly in certain areas. I think they're getting better now at bringing hospice into the medical training so that there's more of an open mindset. But if someone's in an assisted living, it's just like that, we're going into their home, and it's the family's choice. It's always the family's choice. It's not the doctor, primary care doctors, or the oncologists, or the assisted living manager, or the adult care home manager, or whatever. It's the family's choice about which hospice they use. Now, they may have, and you may want to hear from their experience, who do they recommend? But sometimes those doctors own these hospices, or there's something, you have to make sure that you're going for what you want, what's the right one for you, because there's tons of hospices now, and most of them are for profit.
The other question doesn't apply right now to Arizona, but off here,
Yeah.
would your hospice support given the medication?
So the question is, if I mean, there's no law right now for medically assisted suicide. If we did, would our hospice support the law? And I would think if there was a law, we would support it, because that would be the law. I personally, what can be done in Arizona is palliative sedation, which is not assisted suicide. But it is, if someone is under extreme duress and discomfort, that they can, and with a board and ethics and committee and so on, but it's not actually that complicated to do as it may sound. And our medical director, and there's a way to sedate somebody, and they're sedated for a period over days, and then of course they're not eating or drinking, they pass naturally. But that person is obviously, they're on hospice, they have a limited prognosis, they're getting towards the end of life. Someone, for example, with ALS, I've seen people with ALS choose to do that because it's getting so uncomfortable to breathe. And so I've definitely been involved with those things. And but I don't is the assisted suicide, I don't know that it's close to being approved in Arizona, is it? Or I haven't heard it even mentioned in a while. So does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess it would be up to the individual clinician. And when we have our and what would happen when the law came out, and what that would what hospices were expected to do, because we have to follow federal as well as state laws. As an individual, if you're asking me, regardless of where I worked, then I personally feel comfortable with it, given if I looked at the whole person and the whole situation. I wouldn't be comfortable probably in certain situations, maybe because someone's depressed and they don't really have a terminal illness. But if they have a terminal illness that's really causing them discomfort, then I think it's the person's right to choose. I think that's my personal belief. But yes. Oh, I promised this lady over here first. Sorry, lady in the black.
I just have two questions. and choking and that sort of thing. Is there some sort of like machine?
So I'll answer that first, and I'm repeating it for the people that are on Zoom here. The question is if a person has a lot of phlegm and they're choking, is there a machine that can be, the family can be trained on to use? And there is a suction machine that's pretty easy to use, that we can bring in. You know, it has a long tube and you put it in the person's throat and you suction. And we can have, there are medications that help dry up those secretions. But as from a nursing perspective, one of the best things to do, depending on if the person can drink fluids, drinking fluids and not being dehydrated, can make those fluids less thick, and then positioning somebody on their side so it drains naturally with a towel, I've found is just about as effective as anything, and as giving medications to try and dry it up, which also has other side effects usually. So, but there are suction machines. Yes, that's about as far as I know, just in the home setting.
In your presentation, you said something about used up.
So the question is there a time that the hospice benefit does get used up that Medicare will not pay? And the answer is no. There's some people that go on and off. You know, some people are different in how they decline at end of life or with a terminal illness. And some people kind of go downhill like this, and they probably go on hospice once. Maybe they go to hospital in the middle somewhere, and they go back on again. Some people go up and down and up and down and up and down, and they may never get quite back to where they were the last time when they go back up, just down a little bit and up and down. So some of those people go on and off of hospice. They may go on and off of hospice between 20 or so times, but no, there isn't a point where someone uses up their benefit, but there is a point where the medical director for the hospice might say you don't qualify anymore. We can't keep you on anymore, because people can become custodial, which means they haven't really continued to decline. They're just more like they could live like that for the next 10 years and stay at the same place, still needing care with help and they can't be alone, but they could just live like that for a long time. Well, that we do all kinds of measurements and things that we measure on somebody. We're checking their weight. We have all kinds of scales that we use that measure somebody's decline, and palliative performance scale, and what the FAST score, which is for dementia, and all kinds of things. And we have to be monitoring and recertifying if someone's declining or not. And then of course what we see and what the family reports, and then we have to report that to our medical director, and it's ultimately his responsibility to decide. Now the family can, when we give notice to somebody and we say, look, we don't feel like your loved one qualifies anymore, the family can appeal that, and they have 48 hours to appeal it, and it goes to a committee that, you know, through Medicare, and if they agree with the medical director, then there's nothing else that the person can do. That the benefit is they are discharged. I've had a few of those, and I've seen that for the most part those committees side with the doctor. And so because there's another doctor for that committee looking, and doctors, you know, they usually have the same kind of they're a team. So I don't see the doctors disagreeing with one another with that. So if that makes sense, but someone could go to another hospice and try it and get them put on there, and that sometimes happens as well. Yeah. And this lady.
My mother died at age 98. She was on a hospice in assisted living for 4.5 years.
Wow.
She'd go off periodically, and a month later she'd go back on. So
this lady had her mom on and off the hospice for 4 years.
my question.
Oh, okay, you have a question.
Everybody nowadays have some sort of a rating system. I understand in hospice, it's a star system. How long have you been in business? What do you think of the star system? Do you have stars, or haven't you?
We've been in business since 2008. The star system is just starting, and quite honestly, the star system, that some of it's absolutely impossible to achieve because, for example, you get, some of the ratings are done and for, I'll use the inpatient. So if you get a certain percentage of inpatient care, if you give a certain percentage of inpatient care to your patients, that increases your rating. At the same time, if you give too much inpatient care, you're in trouble. And so, because that's very expensive, and the population that we have in this area, people don't really want to go to inpatient units to die. And there's hardly any of them, and the regulations to go into them are very, very strict now. And so, the highest rating that I've ever seen in Arizona for this new star system is 4. We've been 4, we've been 3, we've been 4, we've been 3, based on some of these things. I've never seen a 5. There are family surveys that are done, and the family surveys, they're called CAP surveys. And you can take, usually the people that are unhappy about something, fill them out. The people who are ecstatic about everything, you know, they tell you they love you when they see this 6-page document. They're like, I just love them, but I don't want to fill this out. So we have to remind everyone, not just the people that were just easy to help, everyone to please fill them out. Because if you get only 4 people filling them out in a month, and 3 of them are the people that were upset because, I don't know, the nurse was 4 minutes late or something like that, then then you're not going to do very well, you know. But if you can get everybody to fill them out and encourage those happy people, because I can say from on behalf of us, we've grown. We've got about 230 patients, and our complaints, or what we call service failures, that come in the front, has dropped considerably, because we grow at a rate that we can manage our quality. And so I know that if we get 3 service failures, we're very, very strict about anything, whether the nurse was late or the equipment was late or whatever, we call it all a service failure. And we fill that form out and we do everything on it. And so I've seen that drop. And when we have our ratings also on, you can look at our ratings on Google as well, where families get on and they write their thing. So we have one for Tubac and Tucson, and I've got 2 hands going up.
Can I mention?
Yeah. Do you want this?
We want people on the, I can love this. Oh, hi. Hi, everybody. I was just, speaking of ratings, we won awards. You'll see that on our
Yes.
website. The last 2 years, and also might be this year, we were voted the best hospice in Green Valley. And
we're a runner-up this year. We're waiting for
we don't know yet. We don't know if we're the best or
One
the
of
next
2.
runner-up. We were
At
this
least.
year. And we also were the favorite last year for Arizona Daily Star, and Living Life After 50 magazine voted us as the best hospice also. So we continue to get these types of awards from the quality of the staff and how we hire, and how these educational programs are actually going to help people to understand what hospice is. But anyway, so we definitely have credentials for that, and it is on our website if you want to look at that. But I just want to let you guys know that we have many beautiful comments like she's talking about our hospice.
So does that answer your question? Yes. Okay, thank you. Yes.
In our experience, hospice was in dire need of funds. The reimbursements did not meet the cost. So there was lots of fundraising going on to supplement that. Is that your case also? Do you need additional?
We get donations from family members. We are a nonprofit. We don't have a foundation. With COVID, I mean, everything is getting more expensive, and staffing is getting more expensive. But we just keep taking care of people. Super Anchor and I, and about a good core of our staff, we are missionaries, we're volunteers. So that really helps our particular hospice to stay afloat and to go to these rural areas. I'm at 10 o'clock and I've got a few more hands. Is that okay? Or do I need to stop?
Well,
4 more minutes.
what we do is we start promptly at 9 o'clock and people are free to leave at 10 o'clock.
Okay,
So you're gonna see some folks leaving because that's what we want. But Sandy has a question back there.
yes,
If you want to stay around,
yes,
both of you, and answer individual questions, that would be good.
okay. So should I answer this lady publicly? And then we'll stay here for any other questions, because I know there were 2 ladies here with questions. Oh, DNR, this lady's wondering how we have handle DNRs. We encourage everyone to sign them, but we don't make people sign them to come on. And they don't have to have one signed to be admitted to hospice. As time goes on, we'll follow up, because it's not a very pleasant experience to see someone who the chances of them being revived, have got cancer of the bone and they're 90 pounds getting resuscitated. It's really not ideal. And I have very candid discussions with the family because I want them to know what it's going to look like. And but again, we don't push it. So often people aren't quite ready to sign one when they come on. The lady in the purple.
Would you be comfortable sharing the most memorable experience you've had with someone who actually passed?
Yes. Yes. Oh, sure. This lady's asking for any memorable experiences I've had with someone passing, with seeing deceased relatives. A few just quickly off the top of my head. I went into a room and one lady was in transition, and there was no one in the room, and I could not sit anywhere because there was a brother in a chair and there was another person in this chair. I ended up sitting on the commode because it was really the only place and no one was sitting. And but yet I was the only one in the room, and I assumed that the people that she was seeing had passed on. And then I later asked her daughter, and she said yes, and her brother had passed, and I think it was her dad or whoever. I knew that they would have passed because she was too old to have someone alive at that age. So I experienced that. I also have experienced in one particular case, a child going into a room with her grandmother, and the little girl coming out. She wasn't scared at all, but she's like, there's just too many people in there. I'm not going in there with grandma. But there was no one but grandma in there. And I thought that was adorable. So there were just a couple of quick ones. And but yeah, I've had some very beautiful experiences as well as interesting experiences, because sometimes people, once they've passed, they want some interesting things done to them, like a big face full of makeup, or their cowboy boots on, and their cowboy hats, and their, you know, all their denim and everything. And if you don't get there soon enough, it's a bit hard to put some of these things on. So I've had some pretty fun experiences with people and their families, and you just get used to it, you know. But yeah, and sailors that want their sailors outfits, and very beautiful things. Okay, I'm fired. So thank you. Thank you. You're welcome.